This is Leave Your Mark. I am Vince Cortese, and today's guest is JaBig. He is an international DJ, and he also really likes riding bikes. His mission is to provide bicycles for the children in rural Africa villages so that they can attend school by using the power of mobility. These children also deserve a chance at an education that will enrich their minds and provide a future opportunities. Being born in Rwanda has made Africa a part of who he is, and he will become important to him to empower the youth the best that he can. Thank you for being my guest here today, JaBig.
Thank you for having me.
Hi there, and welcome. Now it's time for America's favorite podcast, Leave Your Mark, with your host, Vince Cortese.
If it's fly, loose fitted, it's Cortez. If freezing, chubbers in it, it's Cortez.
Leave Your Mark is about inspiring the world, one guest at a time.
Pass the word from Brooklyn to Pittsburgh, from urban to suburb, it's Cortez, you heard?
And here is our host, Vince Cortese.
You have a very interesting life. I want to share with the audience a background on you. You're born in Rwanda, Central Africa. Your mother was a bookkeeper, your dad was a church pastor, and you're one of 5 kids, second born. And at the age of 15, you go to Kenya. And there you pursue growing up and eventually wind up in Johannesburg, South Africa, at high school. And your activities are DJ and participating in theater plays. So this is interesting. And then you move from there to the University of Pretoria in around 2000, and you're pursuing a bachelor's degree in marketing, of which you soon leave the university to get on with your career endeavor of being a DJ / adventurer. So you're an international traveler through your efforts of goodwill. So it's quite an impressive story. So we're catching up with you here on your completion of going through the United States and having donations for your organization, providing the money back to Africa. So share with me how this idea came to be, when you decided to do it, and now that you've completed it, share with me how you feel about what happened.
Like you said, I'm a career DJ, and as DJs, I realized that you have a lot of, I usually work from Thursday to Saturday, which is the weekend, and I have a lot of time during the week. So one day I was randomly walking by a bike shop, and I purchased a bike and I started riding it. And I really enjoyed it so much that, I kept going at it. And before I knew it, I'd ridden across Canada, and that was a journey of self-reflection. And then years later, I would embark on a world tour that did not happen because the pandemic, COVID-19 interrupted it, after doing a few countries in Europe. And when I returned to Canada in 2020, I was in lockdown. Nightclubs were closed because as DJs, we're the first one to be sort of like put on hiatus, and we're the last one to reopen. And so I decided to ride across Canada again. But this time I'd realized that my bicycle journeys were attracting a lot of attention online, on social media. And I figured, I get enough attention. I'm sure I can share it with a good cause. Usually the trips were for my own personal, adventure spirit. However, I realized that, I ride bicycle for fun and for adventure, which is a privilege. But somewhere a whole continent away, the continent of my birth, bicycles actually empower people because those young pupils are able to get to school. Believe it or not, in some countries, in some areas in the world, the reason somebody never went to school was because they could not get to school. And the bicycle bridged that gap. So towards 2021, again, the world was pretty much on lockdown, and I knew things were about to reopen, and I had 6 months, and I decided, why not use those 6 months to ride around the US? Because I realized by then that also my trip around the world was pretty much, I could not continue it because the world has changed, and I had given myself 5 years, and I was already on year 3 without moving. So I decided, let me do one last big epic ride, and I decided the US for the simple reason that it's south of Canada, where I currently live, and so it's close to home, and also culturally it's more or less similar. And the US is also the country where I have the biggest fan base, as a DJ, but also I guess as an adventurer. And I have so many friends there, and I figured, you know what, this is the best country. But also, the US is a country that fascinates me because as a Canadian, I've been into the major cities, but I've never been into, the parts that sort of like, the rural areas, the part
Yeah.
that outside the big cities, like most travelers, we all go to the major point, but we don't know what the rest of the US looks like. So then I decided, okay, let me make a trip out of it and make it a fundraiser. And in February 2022, which is of this year, I left Vancouver, where I currently live, across the border into the US, and off I went. The ride took me 6 months. It had a lot of ups and some small downs that were, unforgettable. And I really got to see, to get spoiled by the kindness and generosity of American people. And I really got to see some of the places that I dreamed about or dreamed about. For instance, riding across, along the Pacific Coast Highway in California,
Yeah.
or riding into a desert, because I've never been in a desert in my life, so it was quite something.
Yeah.
And I've ridden across Canada, so I'm used to big countries, but I also realized that the US is really big. But the difference versus Canada is that it's populated. So I was never really in the middle of nowhere for more than 6 hours. And so the trip was amazing. It was life changing. And like I like to tell people, it seems like I was on a bicycle, but the trip felt like a pilgrimage, because most trips are really for adventure. The first trip across Canada was more soul searching. I was reconsidering my DJ career after 20 years. I was wondering if I was going to carry on with something else. Some people go around the block to think. I decided to ride across Canada. And on this one, I felt that I was going to do something for charity, but it turns out that this trip was more about some sort of like spiritual journey and pilgrimage, and also to find my role on this planet, because the love I got from the Americans also helped me, I guess, love myself some more, because I said, if you tend to get a warm welcome and people tend to appreciate you, perhaps you should be as kind to yourself as people are with you, and that it was really eye-opening. And also this trip was full of challenges. The wind mostly was the biggest challenge, because, the wind, you can never escape it. If you're going in a circle, well, you're going to have to face the wind at one stage. And in moments when I was down, Americans picked me up. Not literally, but figuratively, hosted me, fed me, gave me a place for shelter, rode with me, or, it was really, it's something, it was too much love. And it's something I'll never forget about that trip.
Connect with us on LinkedIn. Be our friend on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram.
Whether jumping out the MP or jumping on the app.
You are listening to Vince Cortese. We just want you to leave your mark.
I want to mention a few things here now. You mentioned how kind the American people were to you, and you have over 500 plus deep dish remixes and 7 billion hours streaming on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Music. So, you're an extremely popular man on an international level. And I got to throw this in there. You have the Guinness Book of World Records, longest bike ride across any single country. So while you were trying to collect your thoughts, instead of going around the corner and hopping on the bike, you drove around the country or rode around the country. So let me ask you this, because I'm intrigued by the fact that this is an incredible giving of yourself for your homeland and your people, as well as yourself. So you find out you had a greater reward than what your actual intentions were. So how did your father's influence as a pastor affect you growing up, or even now as an adult?
I really believe that the biggest gift that my parents, my father and my parents, I'm gonna say them, gave me was, like the faith and putting me into good schools. Those are really, and first of all, I grew up in a Christian family, obviously, and I followed the faith out of culture. But then I realized that by the time I got to university and I left home, it's something that I kept for myself. And so, and my father is a man of prayers. He prays a lot. And I realized that, well, it's something I picked up from him. And the fact that I went to good schools, it really opened up my mind. And this is actually the funny part, because for him, for him, and I'm going to include my mom there, because both my parents sent me to good schools, and they influenced me with the faith. For them, they were sent me to good schools with the intention of making a lot of money, because that's financial stability, and then going and getting a big house and getting married and having a family, because that's what having a good happy life means. Whereas for me, what I learned at those schools is that the most important thing is to follow one's dreams and desires. And money, yes, money helps makes the world go around, but it's not the root of happiness. So that's why they were a little bit shocked and surprised when I decided to drop out of university, for instance, to become a DJ.
Oh, I'm sure.
Absolute shock. And they told me, you know what, if you want to go do your thing, just do it. But in the mind, I thought I was just going to do it for like 6 months and then and be back at it, come back to university or this and that. And they realized, oh, this is actually a serious profession, because one day I was paying them a visit and they overheard me on the phone negotiating a deal, a booking, and and telling the client what is it exactly that they required, and giving them like method of payment and a deadline of payment. And then they told me, like, this is actually a serious business. I'm like, yes, it is. And it can pay very well depending on how much somebody gives it. For instance, for me, I usually chose to work 3 times a week. If I chose to work 5 times a week, or if I chose to also spin at weddings or a lot of corporate events, I could make a fortune out of it. However, for me, I lived in Montreal at the time, and Montreal is a very inexpensive city to live in. So with just working 3 nights a week, I could make a very comfortable living. So yes, the influence of my parents is actually what dictates my life today, because also again, with the thing with a good education is that I read a lot of books, and I was a big fan of the author Jules Verne, who wrote many books about travels and epic expeditions. And one day, when I was a kid, I told myself one day I will go around the world and I will travel the world, and I would just go be.
How old were you when you said that to yourself?
I was probably 8.
Oh my.
Yeah, from
like
a very young
grade.
age.
You're really young.
Yeah, from a very young age, I was reading like high school books, because I love to read. So I didn't want to read like kids' book. I wanted to read like what, I remember I would go into, I was in primary school, and I remember I would go into the secondary school library, and
Oh, wow.
I would get books there, and the librarian, the librarian would ask me if I understood those books, and I said yeah, and every week she would give me 2 new books to read. So, and most of them were about travel or history. And so, to get back to your question, what influence did my parents have on what I'm doing now? It's 100% of everything, because A, they gave me the education to sort of like shift my mind, and number 2, with the faith, I'm able to go forward, because if you're part of what I do is going in faith, because I don't know what awaits me, or sometimes I just have to make the first step and then the world comes around. And so, and for them, sometimes I know that they look at me, because I have 4 siblings and they all have traditional, secure, well-paying jobs. And sometimes they look at me and they're like, what happened with this one? Meanwhile, they don't realize that it's actually thanks, and it's not because, it's thanks to them that I get to be free and to enjoy this life that I love so much.
If you have a story to share, tell us, how are you going to leave your mark? Contact us. Leave your mark with our host, Vince Cortese. Be our guest.
And I'm
That
very
is
grateful to
awesome.
them.
Let me ask you this. So then you're drawn to the music. To me, the music is one of the magical gifts of this world. and the vibration and the tonality. So, I mean, you're getting fed in a whole different way with creating this music, watching the audience respond to the music, and then how the evening plays out. And then there's a residual effect to this because music's a wonderful thing because you play it over and over and over as your streaming of over 5 billion hours is proof of that. So this is an energy that you're creating. So how does this come to you? And now that you've been doing it for so many years, how have you mastered the skill of being a DJ and blending music and sound?
I have the very rare privilege of playing what I want to play, which is most of the time DJs adapt to the crowd. Whereas now I've adapted, I've made a name where people come to hear what I have to play, and this is, and of course it's, I would say it's a skill that can be learned. I've been doing this since I was 15. So it's also, sometimes people ask me like, how do you pick music or how do you play? I've been doing for so long that I don't know. It just comes to me. I can go into a room. I can go, even if I don't know the audience I'm playing, I can just, it's reading a room. There's an expression nowadays, there's a whole, popular saying, read the room. And that's what I've been doing since I was 15, and it also helps with the ability to live and interact with people on a social level because, I'm used to reading people, and I can tell when the crowd is getting bored. I can tell when people want, I can feel the energy when people are a little bit maybe excited or maybe when they're feeling melancholic, and I can adapt my sound to that. And what it brings back to me is fulfillment. And I find it very interesting that sometimes since starting my YouTube channel that go to those millions and millions of, listeners, I don't feel the need to be live in front of a crowd anymore because I get my artistic fulfillment from going online and seeing people telling me that they enjoyed my music. But also I feel a sense of accomplishment because I realized very quickly that people were, for me, when I listen to music, I'm listening to music. Whereas it turns out that the rest of the world, music is soundtrack to whatever they're doing. And it can be in the best of times or it can be in the hardest time. I've had people messaging me telling me that during the concert, the chemo, for the 1 year chemo, they got by thanks to my music. I had people telling me that they were mourning the loved ones and they couldn't sleep. And then one day they discovered my mixes, and for the first time in 1 year, they could have a full night's sleep.
Wow.
And I've had people telling me that the class was, they could not control the class, and the children were out of control. And then one day they started playing my music, and then the music would calm the class down, and they could focus. I've had couples telling me that their marriage was falling apart, and the kids could feel it, so it was breaking the family apart. And one day they started making food together, and they would play my music as soundtrack, and it brought the family together. So whereas in a nightclub, what you're getting is people who came and had a good time and then they go home, which is not bad. But when when the music streams, then it's also it's almost like my music is touching people's lives in different ways. And one day I'll never forget, I was in the Arctic Ocean freezing my butt off, and I was so cold, but I was tired, and I sat down on the side of the highway, and I was so like, I was feeling like I was really feeling tired. And then for some weird reason, I got, I didn't have a lot of cell service, but sometimes I would get some intermittent phone service. And then I went to my YouTube channel to quickly see if because I'm always scared that somebody's going to hack it. So, and then I was reading the comments, and I'm like, and I told myself, I'm out here in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by absolute nothing. And yet, out there, 100,000 people, as I think of this, are out there listening to my music. So my work is affecting people. Meanwhile, I'm out here almost freezing to death. And it was quite a revelation.
Yeah.
And for me, like I said, it turns out how most people see, for instance, most people come and thank me for the music and this and that, but they don't know that I'm actually the one who's grateful because my heart is full and I feel accomplished. some people want to build the biggest castle. Some people want to, to have the most millions. Some people want to, for me, when I grow up, I'm already doing it, and I've already done it. The fact that I'm more impacting people's lives that way through music or through my adventures, I mean, I think wanting more would be a little bit of, it would be rude to want
I want to ask you a couple questions here before we go. So your fulfillment is in the gratitude that the people provide you with the sound of the music, how your music affects them. Do you have any more of these type of riding across the country events planned in the near future?
For now, I'm going to give it a break because I've been doing this since 2016,
Okay.
and my body's tired. But also, most of my trips are minimum 6 months, and which means that I also need to start doing quote unquote adult things like, settling down, meeting somebody. Because when you meet somebody and tell them, "I'll be right back. I'm going to be gone for 6 months," the person is like, "Okay, why do you need to be in a relationship?"
Yeah.
And but also, I see that the world is, I need to sort of like, even though I live in a free manner, I found that I'm a little bit careless. So I need to start, saving money, and, I'm 43. I'm not getting younger. So I need to make those adult decisions right now.
You're still a young man. Well, I appreciate you coming by and sharing your story. This is incredibly heartwarming. And I want to definitely watch more of what you're doing. So I'll be in there while you're streaming and checking out your new music. But in the meantime, when everybody comes by, I ask them how they'd like to leave their mark. And I would like to know how you'd like to be remembered.
I'd like to be remembered he made good music and he told funny stories. That if I could be remembered as that, and if people felt good or better, interacting with me as a person or my works, that's a bonus. But I hope that's what I'm doing as a living person, because I tend to focus more on the being alive than in the future, because I'm not going to be around to enjoy the future.
Your music will.
Hopefully.
Well, that's incredible. You're touching a lot of souls, and the reality of what makes you happy and being most important, and you feeding that. That's also encouraging and inspiring as well. So taking that risk and being the DJ and the adventure that you are, we all benefit from it. So appreciate you coming by, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to be up to next.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Leave Your Mark today. Tune into our next episode of Leave Your Mark with Vince Cortese. Be blessed.
You just left your mark. Thanks for listening. Listen to more episodes on demand. Just click Leave Your Mark with Vince Cortese.